We thought it might be good at the beginning here to go through all of the parts and supplies that we're going to need for this project so that we can talk about those and give you a better look at everything. And there is this bill of materials checklist here that I have a copy of, and this is available on the Crowbox website. You can download and print it out, or I guess just look at it on your phone. But I'm going to go through all of our items in the same order they're listed here, so we can follow along that way. So the first category of things are fasteners and hardware, and one of the most important things is a set of M3 machine screws, and M3 means they're 3mm screws. This particular set is one that I'm kind of partial to, and I use it for all my personal projects. You can see it's, as it says, just a mess of machine screws. What's really important about this set is that it comes with nuts, most do, and it comes with washers as well, and we need washers. The other thing that is very important is that you have sizes. So M3 means that the screws are 3mm in diameter. The next number is how long they are. And it's important to have 8, 10, 12, 16, and 20mm long screws for this project. You can buy machine screws piecemeal at hardware stores, but I find that it's more economical just to buy a nice big set of them online most times. The other very important feature of these screws, these are stainless steel, and I like stainless steel personally, but what's important is that they're shiny. They don't have a coating of any sort, because we require these to conduct electricity for the project. So make sure you get nice shiny metal machine screws. The other thing is, and I'm not sure if I can get a good shot of this with the camera, but you want to get what's called pan head screws, and that's this low profile screw. You can see that the screw head is just a little button basically, and that's important because they're very thin, they're low clearance, and we rely on that space within the machine. So there's another type of screw called socket cap, which has a very large head, and those would cause you all kinds of problems. So there's more information about how to make sure you're buying the right kind of machine screws right there on the Crowbox website. The next thing we need is washers, and a specific kind of washer, because we're not actually using these for construction. We use them as counterweights inside the machine. So we use fender washers, and this size is perfect, I think. 3/16 by 1 1/4 inches, which means that the washer is 1 1/4 inches in diameter with a 3/16 inch diameter hole in the middle. And you'll need several of these. We stack them up like this and use them inside the machine as a weight, and you want to be able to adjust that weight by adding or subtracting washers. So it's good to have several. This is a box of, I think, 30, and I built 2 Crowboxes out of this and still have plenty left. I think it takes, with this particular washer, I use I think 8 per Crowbox. The next class of item is our adhesives and tapes, and the most important of those is our cement. And we use SiGrip Formula 16 cement, which is kind of a gel consistency, and it is not a glue, it's actually a solvent cement. So this type of cement works by melting plastic and then allowing that plastic to mingle together and then dry and fuse. It's chemically welding. For that reason, this is the only adhesive that's acceptable for this project. You can't use super glue or model glue, which is generally designed to work more with styrene than something like acrylic, and we're working with acrylic parts. So make sure you're getting SiGrip 16. This large tube here is a 5-ounce tube, and that's a lot of cement. This is a 1.5-ounce tube here that I've been using for some other personal projects. A 1.5-ounce tube contains enough cement for this job. So if you want to get 1.5 ounces, that's great. If 5 is what you want or all you can get, great. You'll just have, a whole bunch left over. So again, I'll just stress one more time. this must be your adhesive. Other things are just not going to work the way we want for keeping this acrylic fused together chemically. Now, to apply that cement, we need precision applicator tips. And I kind of like this type. It's got a really long nozzle on it, but I always just cut them down to about here. But these are fairly easy to work onto the nozzle of the cement tube. That's the type of applicator that I recommend. It's a really effective one that doesn't cost very much. You also need a tube of super glue, any kind of super glue, cyanoacrylate glue. This is the tube that I had around the house for just generally fixing things. We only use a very small amount of this when we're assembling our electronics because there are some plastic parts that we want to glue together that don't react with our cement, and so the cement wouldn't work to glue them together. So we use super glue on that spot. But because we have some super glue here, I just want to remind you, you can't use super glue to put the rest of the Crowbox together. You got to use that side grip cement. There's a few different kinds of tape that we need, and the first of which is an all-weather or an outdoor duct tape, and they'll say that on the wrapper, that they're an outdoor duct tape or an all-weather duct tape or both things. I believe this particular roll was labeled as a snow and ice duct tape, and what we're looking to get out of this is a nice tough vinyl jacket and a strong adhesive. And I think that I don't recommend silver duct tape, but just about any duct tape with a blue or black jacket I'm sure will be fine. But it's best, I think, if you can get one that's labeled for all-weather or outdoor use. Our next tape is metal duct repair tape. And I want to show you something about this tape. There's three features that are really important. So I'm going to take a little piece off here. The first feature that's really important is that it have a paper backing that you can peel off. This is not adhesive, right? This is just on the roll with the backing. And if you look at it from the side, you can see that it's paper backed. And the next thing about this that's very, very important is that it's actual metal. And so when I pull off this paper backing here, you'll see that if I put a crimp in this foil tape, it stays because it's metal. It's actual metal. And that's what we want, is a tape that's going to conduct electricity on this side and stick really well on this back side. So it's usually labeled as metal duct repair tape. Kind of here that it's metal. I wanted to point out that sometimes this type of tape is sold as a metal duct repair tape, and this is the wrong thing. This is just a thin plastic tape with some Mylar coating, or maybe Mylar, maybe inside of it might not even be coated. But this is thin and wobbly, and it's just plain old plastic tape, and it doesn't have the paper backing. It sticks right back to the roll. This is the wrong tape. You want to make sure that what you're getting is actual aluminum foil on a roll with adhesive. Next up, we have our traction tape or grip tape. This is a very wide roll, and you don't have to buy a roll that's as wide as mine here. But it's also nice. This is on its own paper backing, so I can cut pieces the size that I want and then peel them and stick them down. So we use this mainly on top of the machine to create traction so that birds don't slip when they land. The other thing about this is that it's gritty. This is a sandpaper style. They also make some rubber style ones that are just textured rubber. Those are fine too. Little bird claws will grab that just fine. The one thing I do think is interesting about the actual sandpaper style tape is that you can, in a pinch, you can use this for sandpaper. It's not the best sandpaper, but when you're dealing with a project like ours that doesn't use a lot of sandpaper, you can sometimes get by just by using some of your traction tape. And our last type of tape is masking tape. And this is just plain old blue painter's tape, and it's fine. This is one of the more narrow rolls. It doesn't matter if you get a wider roll or one of the really wide rolls. It doesn't matter if you use the yellow art supply style of masking tape either. The masking tape is only used temporarily while we build to hold some parts together while cement dries. So this is the kind that I always use, but really any masking tape will work just fine for you. So next up we'll talk electronics, and the first and probably most important thing on that list is an Arduino Uno R3, which means revision 3, microcontroller. And this is a little computer that works as the brain of our Crowbox. And the other thing I want to talk about while we're talking about the Arduino is this cable here, which is a USB A to B cable. And so it has a pretty familiar looking USB A connector on it, and then one of these more odd USB B connectors that you maybe have seen most often on printers. So the Arduino Uno, this one is an actual genuine Arduino, or Genuino, I think that's what they call those, and it does not come with the necessary cable. So if you get a genuine Arduino, you'll need to get your own USB A to B cable. This is required, the cable is required to connect this to your computer so that you can put the Crowbox software onto the little Arduino. Now, there are clones available, like this one here, this Elegoo, I think is how they say that, clone. It's an Arduino Uno clone. And this costs quite a bit less than a genuine Arduino. And something that's nice about this is it actually comes in the box with one of those USB A to B cables. So if you're willing to use a clone, you can get a better deal on a clone, and oftentimes you can find one that includes this cable as well, which will save you a little bit of money on the rest of the materials. You won't have to buy one of these cables piecemeal if you happen to not have one. You're also going to need one 170-point breadboard, and I have a multi-pack of them here because that's how they always come. There's such a small and inexpensive item, it doesn't make sense, I guess, for anyone to sell just one of them. There's an adhesive back. You just peel this paper off and it sticks. We're going to be using that. But as far as finding these, I think just getting a good deal is all you're looking for. I don't know that there's anywhere to go in terms of quality with these. I've never noticed any of them to be better or worse than any others personally. So I don't have any really specific ones to recommend to you. This next item is tiny. It's a little 6mm push button. It's a PCB or printed circuit board mounted push button, and these are also always sold in, for obvious reasons, in multi-packs, a bag of 20 or box of 50 or by the hundreds, whichever. We only need one, unfortunately, for the Crowbox, but you'll have to buy several to get that one. The good thing is they're cheap. Next on our list is screw terminal blocks, and I have a couple different kinds here to show you. These little green ones here have 2 terminals per block, as you can see, and these blue ones that I have are 3 terminals per block. What's important is that you get 5mm spacing, and that just tells you how far apart these pins are. They're 5mm apart. When it comes to building a Crowbox, we need 9 total terminals available to us, and it's pretty cool. These slot together like this. So you would either need to connect 3 of these 3-point terminals to get our 9 connections, or 5 of these doubles, which would give us 10 total, which means 1 would be unused, which is no big deal. So this is another, like most of the electronics, another part where you have to buy, usually you have to buy a fairly large pack just to get a few, but they're also not very expensive. So there's 5 of these put together to make 10 terminals, and 3 of these put together to make 9. And if it's completely up to you and you have the choice of both, I would opt for the blue with the 3. Well, they might not be blue, but I would opt for terminals that have 3 connections on them, just because it's a little bit cleaner in our final build if you have exactly 9 terminals. But having 10 terminals and 1 unused is not a problem. So if these little green guys here, these little double terminals are the ones you can find, you'll be just fine if you get those. Next is the servo motor, and the servo motor turns the rotor inside the machine that opens and closes our lid. We do have a specific recommendation in this case, which is the Hi-Tech HS311 servo. And the reason for that is really simple. It's a low-cost servo, relatively speaking, that's always worked for us, and we've never gotten a dead one, and it has the right accessories that we need, and it just is a really good fit for this project. It might be possible, if you're unable to find one of these, to identify an alternative, but I would warn against using extremely inexpensive servos. If your servo costs $5, there's a good chance you're going to have problems, and that's something we learned on the previous generation of the Crowbox, is that the low-cost servo was good for the cost of the kit, but it was really bad in terms of frustration when it came to getting a Crowbox that functioned well and reliably. So that's the reason that we make a specific recommendation in this case. Next is hookup wire. And what you want for hookup wire is you want 20 gauge, that's 20 AWG, 20 gauge wire that is stranded. So you want stranded wire, not a solid core wire. Another thing that we strongly recommend is that you get silicone insulated wire. It's a lot more flexible than PVC insulated wire, and that works well for our project because we have wire connected to some moving parts, and it's nice if the wire itself isn't adding resistance to those parts. If you can, get a multicolor kit. You know, I always feel that it's nice to be able to use red and black when you're dealing with power, just to stay standard. And you'll also be able to make some color choices about your other sensors inside the machine so that you know which wires lead to where. Something interesting about this kit here is that it came with some other stuff. It came with some heat shrink, which we don't use, but it also came with some free cable ties, which we do use. So if you're able to find a multi-pack of wire that comes with some freebies like that, you might not need to buy a couple things because we do need cable ties for the project. So if they come with your wire, that'd be great. Next up are breadboard jumpers, and I have two different examples of breadboard jumpers here. These are the wires we use to make connections on our little breadboard. You remember that guy? This is probably the most common type of kit here. It's just a pretty bare bones kit. It's got plenty of what we need in it though, so don't worry if this is the one that you end up getting because it's fine. I also have this much larger kit here, which is just more wires mainly. I mean, it came with some tweezers, but both were pretty inexpensive, so you know, it's not as though I had to spend a lot more to get this. But the important thing about the breadboard wires is that you get these little U style, which are just rigid, solid wires with a little bit of insulation on them and bent ends, and they just go into a breadboard like that. They're all pre-sized for various connections, and really easy to use. It's easy to wire up things and change them. So this is what we use on the breadboard. There is another type of breadboard jumper available that is a more flexible wire. It's kind of like a ribbon cable almost, and I would say don't get those. The reason I would say don't get those is because we had a lot of problems with the previous generation of Crowbox where people did a fine job of wiring up their electronics, only to find they didn't work. And that's because those wires had actually broken inside their insulation because they just weren't well made. There's really no way for these to fail here. These are just a solid piece of wire with a little bit of insulation on them. So we've gone back to recommending that you use this style of breadboard jumper, the straight ones, not the flexible ribbon cable style. And next for electronics is ring terminals. And what we want are ring terminals that are sized M3 or number 4. Those are about the same size. You also want them set for our correct wire gauge. Our wire gauge is 20, and these are good for gauges 22 down to 16. So this is the right terminal. The M3 part of this tells us about the hole in the ring terminal. And you might remember that our little machine screws are M3, so that makes these M3 terminals a really good fit for our machine screws, which is what we're going to use to attach these. The other thing to know is that the color of this insulation on the terminal is actually standard. So red is always going to be the right color for matching with our 20 gauge wire. So when you're shopping for ring terminals and you see that you've found the correct size hole, M3 or number 4, you only need to make sure then that you have red insulation. And I'll just sort of demonstrate really quickly here how we use these. I have some stripped wire here in our ring terminal and my crimping tool. And the wire just goes in there and we squeeze it. And that makes a little connection for us that we can screw to our electronics versus having to solder. So we don't have to solder anything in this kit because we're going to be using these ring terminals. Next we have the structural acrylic parts, and that is the actual plastic parts the Crowbox is built from. And those come in 2 flavors. We have some parts that are transparent, like this rotor wheel here. And those are mainly for parts of the Crowbox that we want the crows to actually see through, like the reward basket at the front of the machine. We want that to be transparent so that the crows can see the tasty peanuts inside and generate some curiosity about how they might get some of those. The other class of parts are solid color that you can choose. It might be best, we think, to stick to browns and greens, which are a little bit more in the natural palette of colors with the outdoors. But so, it might help to blend into the environment just a little bit. I mean, of course, we want the Crowbox to be seen, but I'm not sure that means we want it to be hot pink. But it's your Crowbox, it's your choice. You can get the colors that you like. As far as getting these parts, there's a number of ways to do that. If you have your own laser cutter, the geometry files for these parts are available on the Crowbox website for free. Just download them, laser cut your own parts. Beyond that, if you have a maker space in your area, those usually are outfitted with laser cutters, and people who are pretty good at operating laser cutters, you might be able to take the geometry files in and figure out a way to get those parts made for you in a maker space. And the third way to get laser cut acrylic parts is to use an online laser cutting service. And depending on which you choose, you just upload the geometry files that we provide and choose your colors and the 3mm thickness, and just have those parts manufactured and shipped to you. And we have some more detailed information on some of those providers and how to use them available on the Crowbox website and on the Crowbox Google group. So next we'll talk about the things that we need to provide power to the electronics, and there's 2 options there that we'll talk about. The first option is for building a Crowbox that will run off of household power. And to do that, we'll need a couple of things. We'll need a household power adapter that is rated for 5 volts and 2 amps. So that's what I have here. And also we'll need what's called a pigtail, a female pigtail. And so this is pretty simple. It just connects to our power adapter like that, like anything else you would plug in. And then when we build our Crowbox, we'll be connecting these 2 wires to our electronics inside, and then you can plug your Crowbox into the wall or an extension cord and run it off the main power from your household. Pigtails come usually in a bunch, a multi-pack, so you might have to buy several to get one. When it comes to using this option for running a Crowbox off of household power, it's really important to make sure that you use the right kind of extension cord if you're going to use an extension cord. And it's also important to use a GFCI protection device, which is described in better detail on the Crowbox website, because there's a lot of different options for those. So you'll either need to make sure you plug this into a GFCI protected outdoor outlet or add a GFCI in line with your extension cord. But this is the 2 parts that you'll need if you wish to use the household power option. Option 2 for power is to use a USB power bank as a portable wireless power source. But there's kind of a catch here. You must use a power bank that has what's called an always-on feature, and that is not a common feature among power banks. In fact, I would say most power banks do not have that feature, and that means that most power banks are not going to work right with a Crowbox. There's a much better explanation of what always on is on our Crowbox website in an article about using portable power, and I suggest if you're considering a USB power bank, you look at that article first. I do have a power bank here that I have used for a long time to run Crowboxes. And this is one of those times when we'll make a specific product recommendation because this is kind of a rare product. By that I mean a power bank that has a really robust always-on feature by design. And this is made by Voltaic Systems. And so Voltaic Systems makes a number of power banks that have a really good always-on feature. I use them in my Crowboxes. I use them in a lot of other of my personal projects as well. I don't have a relationship with them beyond that. It's just they make the right thing that we need. And most other manufacturers are not doing that. So again, if you're curious about always on and why it's important and why not many power banks have it, there's an article on the Crowbox website for you. So power bank. The next thing we need is a USB-A screw terminal. And so you'll see this has a fairly familiar look to it because we looked at some other screw terminals before, and then the other end has a USB plug. And so what this lets us do is plug whatever wires we want into these terminals here, and in this case all we really want are power and ground, so that we can plug this into our power bank and have the power wires running off to our Crowbox and running it. So we need one of those as well. Now this next item is optional but awesome. You can now get little 5-volt solar panels that are pre-wired with a USB connection that just plugs right on into the power bank. I use this and with this power bank, and my Crowbox just runs forever. Never needs to. I never need to take the power bank out to charge it. And this is this one here doesn't even have a brand name. It's just called Outdoor Wireless Camera Solar Panel, but it's a waterproof panel. It's something that is kind of exciting. I think for us, it's been made possible over the last couple of years by the popularity of wireless security cameras. So with so many of those cameras out there, there was a demand for a nice 5-volt panel that connects right into USB, and so now we have them. I think I might have paid $15 US for this panel. I'm not exactly sure. But it wasn't very expensive, and it keeps my Crowbox running forever, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Without that solar panel, this particular power bank needs to be removed and charged about every 3 days. It'll run for 3 days and nights, depending on how active the Crowbox is. And so that's obviously not ideal. It's nice to have wireless portable power, but the power bank, in my opinion, is most useful if you're able to combine it with a solar panel and just keep things running forever. And finally, we'll talk tools and other supplies. The first of which is a wire stripper and crimper. And this tool does both things. It's got the wire strippers down here at this end, and then the crimpers here. You'll always see those 3 dots, red, blue, and yellow, for crimping insulated terminals. This is kind of a mid-market one, I think. You can get pretty inexpensive ones at most hardware stores, and sometimes these are already in a lot of tool kits. If you have like a household tool kit, it probably has one in it. We also need to be able to drive our machine screws, and the machine screws that I choose have a hex drive in the cap, but they also come with a hex key. So those screws actually come with the tool that I need to install and remove these screws, which is pretty cool. But I can't get around the fact that these screw terminals that we use have fairly small flathead screws in them. So I'll at least need a screwdriver capable of driving these small precision flathead screws. And I do have a personal sort of kit here that I use for all my electronics, and it's just a driver that comes with a whole bunch of bits and handles just about everything. But you can also get eyeglasses screwdrivers, or just a small inexpensive set of what I think they call precision screwdrivers, mostly at hardware stores, if you don't want to end up buying a full kit like that. I mean, cable ties. I like these little 4-inch guys here. You just mainly use them to keep things organized inside like you would any kind of cable tie. You can use full-size cable ties if you want. If that's what you have around, then you don't have to rush out and buy these smaller ones. But if you're shopping cable ties, the smaller ones in this kit are probably the most versatile for you. You need a hobby knife or a razor knife. I like to use just a plain old razor knife. I can change the blades out. An X-Acto or a similar type of hobby knife is also good, but we need to trim tape and make some other sort of precision cuts. So you're going to want something with a nice sharp blade so you can do that safely and precisely. You'll need a pair of needle nose pliers. This is a fairly large one. Small ones will work just fine too, just as long as they come to a pretty narrow point at the end, hence the needle nose, I guess. We'll need some sandpaper. I stole this out of my shop. It's what I normally use for stuff. It's got an adhesive back, which makes it pretty versatile, because you can use it as a sheet of sandpaper, or you can stick it to something rigid and use it as a sanding block. But you can also just buy sheet sandpaper if that's what you want. Or you can probably even get away, as I said before, with just using your traction tape. If you have the grit style traction tape, you can probably just leverage that as sandpaper. But if you're buying sandpaper, I'd suggest go somewhere between 180 and 400 grit, but not below that. At least a minimum of 180 grit if you're going to buy sandpaper. You'll need a ruler because we're going to be measuring mostly just wire, but a ruler comes in handy. And also a pair of scissors. And I would suggest a pair that maybe you don't care about so much, because one of the things we're going to cut with scissors is that traction tape. So you're basically going to be cutting sandpaper with a pair of scissors. So you normally don't want to do that with your nice ones. So this is a pair that I keep around for stuff like this, and I cut sandpaper with them all the time because that's what they're for. And that about does it for our sort of parade here of tools, supplies, and parts. And again, you can get your checklist from the website, and there's also quite a bit more information than I was able to give in this video on every item on the list here. You can find more information on those if you just look at the bill of materials on the Crowbox website wiki.